Well, hi, and welcome to DTV. In this segment, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite subjects and real passions is shoe styling and shoemaking. It was an art that I actually started when I was very young, in my early teens, and has continued with me all throughout my life. I want to, because of the nature and the complexity of shoe styling and shoemaking, I'd like to sort of break this up into many segments because there's a lot to it. And many of you may be interested in just exactly what is involved in styling and making footwear, but not just any footwear. I was doing a whole variety of things. I was doing ladies' fashion footwear. I was designing ballet and dance and jazz shoes. I was doing fetish boots and fetish shoes, sandals, orthopedic work. I was even doing cowboy boots and specialty footwear. It was a real love of mine, and I studied very hard for 5 years in my life, 5+ years. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of exactly what is involved, and I hope that you would find this very interesting. I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights of which each one of them I could do a whole episode or segment on. So where do I begin? I guess when I was about 15, 14, I started designing lasts, which are the forms that were used to design and make shoes. Originally they were made out of wood. Today they're made out of high-density polypropylene, and they are used to stretch the leather and stretch all of the pieces around that basically simulates what a foot would look like. But it has a lot more styling features in it, etc. And a long time ago, lasts were essentially like this. This is an ancient last that was more of a museum piece than anything else, and that's essentially how a shoe is made. Is the components, the leather, is actually stretched around something that kind of looks like a foot and it kind of looks like a shoe. So Ferragamo, Salvatore Ferragamo in Manhattan, was very famous in designing custom-made footwear for famous people, and you could go in and he would have lasts for all of the famous people up on the wall, and he would essentially take their last and make a style for them, and he became internationally famous for doing that. The last today is a lot different. It is really a science all on its own, and today lasts sort of have this sort of appearance in that they are a very hard density plastic, and leather is essentially wrapped around and glued, stapled, or fastened around the sole of the last in order to give the shoe its shape. And then once it's finished being made, then they essentially remove the plastic and finish it with a sole and a heel. This is another example of that type of thing. And last making is actually a science all in its own. Essentially, when a designer or stylist, as in the footwear they call them stylists, not designers, decides to come up with a new style, they basically go to a last maker, and the last, the insole, and the heel are all made together as a composite. It's all designed together to get the right shape and pitch and the right, how shall I say this, the right engineering behind what is involved in correct fit. So then once that is done and the last is done, then there is pattern making. And essentially from the last there is basically what's called a shirt. And a shirt is essentially a piece of representation, a two-dimensional surface. A three-dimensional surface is basically wrapped around the last and put in half and made flat. And from that point, we can design a two-dimensional surface like this, which would actually wrap around the last and fit snugly. And that's how you can tell the shirt is a correct fit for the last, when there's no wrinkles and it fits firmly. That way you know that you have a pattern that is very snug. From that point, then other styling features come into play, and essentially when that's all completed, you end up with a whole variety of patterns that are consist of something like uppers. They consist of box toes, counters, linings, sock lining, the insole and the outer sole are all different pieces. The interesting thing about the pattern maker is that in the garment industry you can forgive a garment by an inch or a couple of centimeters even, but with footwear the precision of correct pattern making is measured in millimeters. So it is quite a science. It actually took me about 5 years to learn and study and practice, and not only be able to come up with great styles, but also I wanted to be able to know how to actually make the shoe and be a sample maker, and then eventually make actually handmade, custom-made footwear, which is what I ended up doing. I had my entire basement set up as a workshop that had everything from leather and components and all kinds of other lasting areas, finishing areas, and all of the pieces that someone could make. I remember one day I sat down with my daughter at the breakfast table, and I asked her what kind of shoes that she wanted, and she wanted to have a pair of cowboy shoes. Well, I designed something for her and showed her the pictures, and then at the end of the day, when she came home and we sat down for dinner, I actually had the finished product. And that was quite an exciting experience for me. Shoemaking is a dying art, a lost art, because of it being such a labor-intensive exercise. I wanted to be able to do everything by hand, which is what I eventually ended up doing. I studied from some of the great with some of the great designers in Canada. Armando Artez was my mentor, and he was from the old school, being Moroccan background, raised in Italy and in France, and knew Lego Marcini in Vigevano, Italy, who was a last maker very well. So I also had the privilege of having guidance and support from a gentleman, late gentleman by the name of Enzo Angelini in Manhattan, who I would go to from time to time and show him some of my work. And he took me aside and basically said, yes, you have the hand, which was a great privilege for someone of his position to bestow on me. So I went on and did custom ladies' fashion footwear, which essentially would produce things such as these, something very dainty and a strappy sandal, which, as you can see, I wore myself many times. I loved the ankle strap, and I loved an extremely thin sole, and this was one of my styles and creations, and I ended up actually wearing them and getting a lot of compliments from them. I have many other styles that I would like to share and show. This was another style that I did create. It has a very interesting sort of look, very classic, and it was something I enjoyed doing a great deal. This is another example of a style that I made. This was one of the originals, and so I've still got it brand new, etc. And I'm actually wearing a pair right now of a shoe that I designed and made myself, and this is a classic pump with a very beautiful style and design, and pumps are quite an exercise to be able to do. I actually studied in the Pedorthic Association, learned about the foot, did a lot of orthopedic work to understand the importance of the correct sizing, correct fitting, the ergonomics of correct footwear, in addition to my styling. I do have a lot of pictures and things that I would like to share and show at some point. I used to actually design and make leather handbags for my footwear, and I was on the cover of several technical journals, including the Footwear Journal and local journals, where I was shown as being a stylist with some creative style and flair. I have a whole portfolio of different things, including some images of some of my work, and I'm very pleased. This was the pair of shoes that I designed for my daughter, right up here in the red, and here was another strappy pair that I made, and did some advertising and did a whole variety of different shoes and boots and things like that. And I will have to show you when I have more time and can get into the details of everything. But I loved it very much. I still have all my shoe machines, my components, etc., and looking at trying to set up my own brand. As a matter of fact, my label was actually on the bottom of the soles of my shoes that I used to make, and I would hand sign them, and each person that wanted a special custom shoe would get a hand signature from me with a number that referred to their specific style. Very exciting. I did some couture work, and some of my shoes were shown in fashion shows at Hazelton Lanes here in Toronto. I would actually take fabric and make shoes with a designer, and make shoes that matched a lady's beautiful outfit. Ladies fashion footwear was my specialty. I loved it very much, and I hope to start it up again sometime in the future when I get some more time, and maybe someone to support the cause, and give me some encouragement to being able to do that. But many people in the past have said I really should have pursued that in a big way. Patrick Cox and Peter Fox were two Canadian designers that went on to become huge, as well as John Flubog, and I was doing work back about 20 years ago that was at least comparable. In many cases I was doing work myself with my own hand. So anyway, I thought that I would share the essence of shoe styling, shoe making, sample making with you, and I hope to talk to you a lot more about that in the next coming segment. So anyway, take care. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.